Welcome to Design to Thrive with Dr. Brooke. I'm Dr. Brooke Silverhorn, your podcast host. Here, we share wisdom for women to create legacy for daughters through conversations around health and life, family and faith, rooted in nervous system healing, embodied living, and God-designed rhythms. I am so excited about today's episode because we are going to introduce our first podcast guest. And I am thrilled that it is none other than my mentor and friend, Dr. Mel Krug. So to introduce her, I am going to read a brief introduction speaker bio for Dr. Mel, and then we will get into it. Most women in the room have already tried to think their way out of the patterns that live in their body. They've read the books, done the programs, had the breakthroughs, and still find themselves hitting the same invisible ceiling. Dr. Mel Krug is the person who finally explains why, and more importantly, shows them what to do about it. Dr. Mel is a chiropractor, somatic practitioner, and creator of the Inspire method, a whole human framework built on years of clinical practice, live facilitation, and working directly with thousands of femme founders, healers, and high-achieving leaders. Her work brings together nervous system science, somatic practice, emotional pattern resolution, and identity-level coaching into one embodied approach that makes the work women have already done finally land somewhere permanent. She shared this work on international stages, podcasts, and platforms focused on nervous system health, conscious leadership, and embodied wealth creation. When Dr. Mel takes the stage, people don't just walk away with new information. They walk away feeling different. Her presence is magnetic. Her honesty is the kind that makes people exhale. And her ability to move a room from intellectual understanding into something felt in the body is what makes her talk stick long after people go home. She doesn't sell transformation. She creates the conditions for it to happen in real time. I'm so excited to have you here, my friend.
Yes, thank you, my friend. It's an honor to share this space with you. That is quite the bio.
It is quite the bio.
I probably could have sent you a shorter one, but that's 10 years of work.
Yeah,
so thank you for having me.
It's all the truth. Thank you for being here.
So
before we really dive into the topic of conversation today, I would love to just have you share a little bit with our audience about what led you to here, what led you to creating Inspire Method, what are the highlights of your life that really drew you into this kind of work?
Well, you are one of them. You and a number of my OG coaching clients really catalyzed me, just to share that and be transparent for the listeners if they don't know or they haven't, explored my work. I used to do a lot more business coaching. And there was a moment in my practices and in my facilitation where I just found with certain clients like you, we were just kind of hammering more strategy and we weren't really getting anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And after being a network spinal chiropractor for years, I said, you know what? I know how the nervous system works. And I found that there was this gap in like business consulting where we teach or we do one thing and yet it doesn't align with our biology. So I like to play in that intersection of business and biology, your business systems and your nervous system. And I just found with a lot of my female clients that more mental rumination and more mental strategy or trying to like do more was like trying to go through a blocked door. We just kept trying to like push it down. And so I started bringing in practices I had learned through not only my chiropractic work, but also neurophysiology and breath work and all this stuff I had learned. And I said, what if I just try this? And it really started to land for people, and people got breakthroughs, not just in their business, but in their life, in their relationships, in their ability to be more present with their kids. I mean, you're a mom, so you get this, and you have a partner. Like, yeah, we can be business owners and founders, but we have this whole other life that's impacting us and we're filtering through our nervous system. So that was you and a couple of my OG clients really catalyzed me looking at things differently and kind of breaking the rules. I think some of the best discoveries are made when we break the rules. So I broke
Yeah.
the rules and here we are, a whole methodology later.
Yeah. I will never forget that call because
Yep.
I was completely in chaos in my body and in my emotions. And if you had followed the rules, you would have just said, well, let's work on SOPs or whatever it was. And you were just like, yeah, that's not going to work. And you just took me into my body and like the after effect was more ease to be able to do some of those, actual business structure things. But
Well, and that's the thing, Brooke, just to speak to that. Like, one, thank you for trusting me
mhm,
and breaking the rules. And I know we'll get into it in our conversation today, but so many people, when they want to grow in business, they think like, I have to do more. And most of the time, what I find is, human beings, especially if you're a business owner, you're intelligent, like you wouldn't have taken a risk and done the thing. And most people know their next step. It's just their body has so much fear and density. And so if you're trying to like take the next step, but you feel like you keep hitting this wall, oftentimes it's because your nervous system and your biology and your body is running a different program. So you have to be able to shift your inner state in order to actually have the confidence to move forward in the things most people already know what to do, right?
mhm. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
definitely experienced that for myself even in the last year, like having to do things that I've wanted to do and desired to do, but felt like held back from. And then when I changed my inner self, it just was like there was ease there. And even going into things that were scary and hard, the more that I am embodied in myself, it's like that wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. You said that women are being called back into their bodies right now. What do you mean by that? Why do you think it's so important for this moment now?
Yeah. What level do we want to talk at? Cosmically or culturally? I think the old models of doing business and growth from the 1980s the pendulum has swung so
Yes.
far. And I think 2020 was a really big wake up call where people had this realization of the way, if they use 2020 as a catalyst, they either said, hey, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to shift the way that I'm doing life, or I'm just going to keep ignoring the fact that maybe things aren't working. And what I found is that we have in business and in the culture, we've lived a very masculine since, 50s, 60s, maybe even before that, very masculine way of doing life. And masculine energy is important. In my work, I like to bridge the gap between masculine and feminine, not necessarily male, female, but masculine energy is that go out and hunt and drive and go to the next thing and penetrate. Whereas the feminine is more the inner movement. And what I'm seeing is, again, could be cosmically, could be just my work in my practice in my coaching company, that people are kind of fed up with like I gotta work hard. I'm seeing people just burnt out and exhausted, and I'm like, there's got to be another way. And so I think right now there's a level of wholeness coming online in the people that I follow and the people that I work with and my mentors, where there's this pendulum now starting to swing more to the center. And I know there's a book that's called Pendulum, but we've swung so far one way. And I think we're seeing the aftermath of that in, again, culturally, health wise, especially cleaning up all this energy from 2020. People are realizing, like, okay, it's time to do things differently from a more whole human approach, involving both the masculine and the feminine. I think that's so important right now because the more that we have people who are living in more of that embodied whole state where we can turn on our masculine and turn on our feminine, I think that's how we heal the planet too. And we all have both parts, right? So
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of different layers happening, and I don't know how deep we want to go in that, but there's a lot of different impacts that sometimes we don't see the aftermath of something until it's like years later.
Right. Yeah. That's great. Many women seem successful on paper, but they're feeling disconnected, exhausted, unfulfilled. Why do you think that, you know, what do you think that we've gotten wrong when it comes to that and really actually truly thriving in our lives and our business?
Well, one, I think a lot of it is a continuation of what I just said, where we have put, there's 6 different stress responses of the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is the fight response, which is I'm going to push through, I'm going to do more. And we've really put that stress response on a pedestal. Like, let's achieve more, let's make more, let's get more accolades, let's get more letters behind our name. And yet, what are we really sacrificing? So I think one, it's a conditioning of the culture that is starting to dismantle. I'm seeing a lot of people like leave their corporate job or make big shifts in their business. Like, now is the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's number one, a continuation of that. And two, when our fight response or our stress response is pedestalized, then that's the way that we seek validation, especially for women, where it's like, oh, well, if I just like do more, achieve more, and this was me, I can speak to this because this was me for a long time, then maybe I'll feel loved. And that's the mother wound talking. The mother wound is I need to do these things in order to feel loved. Whereas we might do things out of safety. I need to do these things in order to feel safe. That's the father wound. So I think a lot of it is looking at what was the conditioning in your childhood? What is the conditioning of the culture? And ultimately, a lot of people have, if we haven't really asked who we are on the inside, like what is our unique design, what are my values, what are my preferences, what actually matters to me in my life fulfillment, I call this your life design, then you won't actually have a clear map. And so you'll take on and do things that you think are in alignment but really aren't. They're just copying other people. They're just taking on like, well, that person looks successful, so maybe I should do that. And they're not really clear on like their map of fulfillment and understanding who they are and what truly fulfills not just their human self, but their soul self.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the concept of map of fulfillment. I mean, I have even experienced within myself the last probably 8 or more years of that. Like, oh, that's working for them. I should try that. Maybe that will help me be successful. And then it's like, no, that's actually not in alignment with who I am. And so, it's a lot of what I love that you coin in the Inspire method, that period of learning and unlearning, like really figuring out who you are at your core and unlearning all of the things that you've taken on over the course of your lifetime. And I think it is interesting to point out too, like when you talked about the mother wound and the father wound, like you can have those woundings that impact how you go throughout your life as an adult. And it doesn't mean that you had a horrible childhood or a horrible upbringing. It just is like something that your nervous system perceived in a moment as traumatic, even though we don't always love to use that word because sometimes it's overused.
Totally.
But I think it is important to just really like look within and say, what is it? Who am I? And I love that, yeah, you have your different ways of looking at, right now I'm not coming
Your
from
life
life
design.
design, yes.
Yeah.
Your life design and really just understanding more about yourself and then like creating from there, which is just really incredible.
Well, and a lot of that too, Brooke, is like most of the time people haven't slowed down enough or give themselves permission to question their own beliefs, their own perceptions. Like, why do I do that? And that's the first step in any sort of dissolving these patterns and ways of being, is actually asking, like, why do I do that? Is it out of like true inspiration and fulfillment because it's something that I would love to do? Or am I doing it out of obligation? Am I doing it because my dad, when I was 10, told me that this is like what success looks like, but I've never actually challenged the status quo? So the first step is just becoming aware and acknowledging the fact that maybe many of your actions are actually driven by your subconscious. And they're not actually truly who you are. So most of evolution of becoming who you are and living into your true life design and map of fulfillment is actually asking better questions and unlearning, like you said, and stopping doing a lot of things, not adding more to your plate. Because many of us are running around doing things and we're like autopilot. We don't even realize why we're doing it in the first place, which most of it comes from fear anyway. So just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. How do you think culture has conditioned women to disconnect from their body's intelligence and their feminine energy?
It's like a whole podcast.
I know, right?
Well, if you consider when, it starts before we're born, and I know you talk about that a lot in your work and your podcast. But if you consider what your mom learned, what your grandmother learned think about ways in which the brain receives information. It might be listening to podcasts. It might be watching TV. It might be hearing, songs, watching commercials. There's so much infiltration of marketing out there, especially since like TV and social media has really come into the forefront. And we don't, I don't think people realize how that slips in, how you talk about things, your languaging and where that's really coming from. And yeah, you may be just casually scrolling online or watching TV, but you don't realize like all of that is infiltrating into your consciousness about what does a woman look like? And what do people say beauty is? I was working with a practice member actually the other day. So this is a timely question. And I was helping her work through her grief around parts of her body that she had to get surgery on because of cancer. And she had this idea from childhood and her mom that in order to be feminine and a woman, you have to have big boobs. Hopefully I can say that on this podcast. Like you have to have large breasts. And I said, do you actually believe that? And she said, well, no, actually, I believe the entire time my beauty is inside. I'm like, okay, so where is this like aesthetic chase coming from? And it came from, well, I got to be accepted from the tribe. And the tribe that we've created has put a lot of emphasis on aesthetics. So, when we think about where this stuff comes from, again, it's from what your parents tell you. It's from things you maybe saw growing up in childhood. I grew up in the 90s. So a lot of that was like diet culture was very pushed on us of, in order to be beautiful, in order to be a certain way, you have to look a certain way. When you learn as a chiropractor and a doctor, like beauty is so much internally and how your body functions. So I think it comes from a lot of the external conditioning, not just from people, but also devices or people that we're listening to online. So the internet is just another thing, and I feel for you parents who have young girls, another thing to navigate and helping them discern, like, what do I believe about my body? And before the age of 10, this, like the brain is so malleable. It's a sponge. And so we see things and we hear things and we take it on as our own until you get older and you start to question that.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting as a mom, and doing my own inner work. Like, there have been times where I have made comments that are negative towards myself and my body. And then what am I teaching, my daughters? So that's why working with you and doing a lot of that inner nervous system embodiment work has been so crucial, because it's like, I do want to be that catalyst of change to impact generations to come versus just being so self-absorbed and worrying about what the collective says, because at the end of the day, like, we are the ones who are going to drive that collective to something new and different.
Yeah, we learn like most of it comes from learning from our elders. Whether you perceive that you had elders in your home or the people you surround yourself with. So you're right. Like I would see, my mom and my grandmother have, unfortunately, but fortunately, the work, like comment about their body often, and not from a place of wholeness, but of self-attack. And that I think was a huge catalyst for me of like, okay, I'm going to see this as an opportunity and not live into that story, but say, you know what? I saw this, so I'm going to create something different. And I'm going to create a way, a model, a method that really empowers, we work with men too, but women to really own their body and love their body. And paradoxically, when you do that, your body actually starts to change. When you live into your life design and when you live into your values and have more of that love and gratitude, your body does start to change. So this is not to say, I make sure I say this often when I'm on podcasts. This is not to say that you need to like let your body go, because there's a continuum, right? Where you're so hyper focused on it. And then there's the other side where you don't put any energy into it at all and you've let your health go. So there's definitely a balancing act that, again, I think we've swung so far in the world, and it's like, I'm about balance and how do we allow both sides to coexist?
Yeah. Obviously, you have seen the shifts that I've experienced in my own health and body. And it's like, yeah, in 2025, I thought that I was making decisions that were in alignment with who I am at the core of my being. And they were, in fact, not. And then my body was just screaming at me, and I put on weight and all of these things. And then nothing changed except I made a decision to live more in alignment with who I am and what inspires me. And I made some small tweaks to my diet, so I won't discount that. But I know at the core of my being, it was that like mental internal embodiment shift that was the big catalyst for me to like start feeling good about my body again, to actually shed some of that extra inflammation and weight. And it's, we tend to discount how powerful that mind and body connection is, and that alignment piece of, living into your design, which again, it's like I could preach it from the mountaintops. Like, here, I have this experience that I'm still learning.
I am too. And I still have a lot to unlearn. And I'm grateful that you share that, Brooke, because I think, when we as leaders get vulnerable, we don't have this shit all figured out. Like, I'm still figuring it out. I choose to make challenging decisions every day. And I found with the clients and the practice members that I work with, they could be doing all the right things. Like they're eating and they're moving and they're like doing everything that Instagram tells you to do. And I'm like, well, it sounds like you're pretty unhappy in your marriage. So like maybe that's actually the thing, or maybe there's a big move in your business that you've been avoiding. And when we feel that undercurrent, especially as women, because we process energy and information so much different. Like most of the trauma work out there is done on men. I think it's important for people to know, like most of the trauma research is done on men.
Interesting.
And women, process energy and information and root experiences so much differently. And what I found is that, again, we could be doing all the things, but actually the very thing that will, quote unquote, move the needle. And we're not just talking like bodily shape, y'all. We're talking about your energy, your vitality. That undercurrent of the decision that you're afraid to make drives your nervous system into a state of fight, protect, or run away. And you'll add more stuff of like, oh, I gotta track my sleep. I gotta track my food. I gotta like go to CrossFit 3 times a week. And then I gotta, and you're just adding more, when in reality, the very thing is the decision that's underneath that deep down is driving this undercurrent. And I find that when women make that one decision, boom, things open up. It could be making a hard decision in your business. It could be, I've been in a relationship that hasn't served me in years and I'm done. Like I'm getting separated and I'm getting a divorce. And I'm not saying y'all are going to listen to this episode and get a divorce, but that is my energy on this planet is very catalytic. Like I don't mess around. Brooke knows this. I get right to the source because you have one life. You have one life here. And wherever your fear is, there is your work. Period. That's Carl Jung. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. That was kind of a tangent and a download. It's like the very thing that you're terrified to, the business decision, the conversation with your boss, maybe separating from a relationship, a breakup, or maybe it's investing in a program where like, okay, this is my next move and I'm done doing all these other things. And like, this is the move. That subconscious, that latent consciousness is absolutely driving your physiology. It's absolutely driving it. So I like to say, like, turn around, feel the fear and move. Don't pretend like you need to be fearless because that's also an illusion. Feel it. And that's a lot of the work, you and I have done that I teach in my programs is how do we feel fear and energy and catalyze it and alchemize it to courage so that we can move in a direction, even though it's scary, you're able to still, I use the analogy of like, you're standing at the edge of the cliff and you feel the fear and you can jump anyway. And then you realize like, oh, that was kind of fun. Like, let's do it again, right? Because you build that courage muscle over time.
Yeah, I've 100% seen that even just in the last like 2 months of my life, like making a decision to simplify my brick and mortar practice. And there was definitely some identity things that I had to work through because it was like I had infused so much of myself into this physical space that it was like, am I losing a part of me? And then I realized, like this physical space is not who I am. I can let go of that physical space and still bring me to wherever I am.
You're omnipresent.
Yes. And also, I think what you spoke to about like making a decision and then it gets easier, taking action, it gets easier. And that 100% I have seen. And then what it does is it just moves energy. I mean, over the weekend, I spent like 6 hours cleaning and organizing my garage because I'm like, oh, I'm going to have stuff for my office that I need a space for at least until I either sell it or whatever. And then I also decided to attend your immersion in October. And so I like signed up for that. And I made these decisions. And then it was like, I had a new patient call on Monday. And this sounds horrible, but I hadn't had a new patient in a couple months. And I think it was just, I was so chaotic in my mind that I didn't have the space energetically or physically for new in my business. And so organizing myself and then also making those scary decisions were just that energetic catalyst to be like, okay, now is the time for more energy, for more momentum, for more movement, which I think leads us well into what $1 million nervous system is.
Yeah. Well, you're demonstrating it well, my friend. I love hearing that. Those are like the most fun. And whether you got like the new pace or not is not what it's about. It's just being powerful and how you move energy. So $1 million nervous system. $1 million nervous system is not just a system that can manage, attract, and magnify wealth in the form of money, but also choose to, for example, move towards something even though it's scary. It's the moments that when life shows up, you don't flinch and you're able to navigate the waves with much more poise, much more groundedness. It's not that you don't feel fear, but you can be courageous in the face of fear. You know, since I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, a big thing I see is as an entrepreneur, and you know this, like your income is not just a straight line. Believe it or not, it can get wavy sometimes, right? Like, let's be real
a lot.
here. Yeah, or a lot. And so having and cultivating $1 million nervous system is number one, turning on your somatic superpowers, meaning that when life throws you challenges, you're not flinching, you're not gripping, you're not forcing, you're able to use and catalyze that energy to your next transformation. So as, Dr. Brooke beautifully described, like, okay, I'm going to move energy, even though maybe I'm feeling some fear. I'm going to mobilize that. I'm going to clean out my garage. I'm going to get organized with things so that allows the stream to flow again. A big thing I see too is working with service-based providers. So as you grow and you work with humans, which is primarily who I like to work with, is people who are working with humans and making them that impact, you're going to deal with human stuff. And clients are going to have opinions. They're going to have their own stuff. So when you have $1 million nervous system, you are steady and you don't feel all of those rejection wounds. You're able to speak clearly. You're able to be of integrity with your work, as well as, I don't like the word boundaries, but set standards without collapsing, without fawning, or, giving away a bunch of stuff because you're fearful that the offers and services that you put out aren't good enough. And so all of this is driven by these primitive patterns that can either help you cultivate your $1 million nervous system or cause you to siphon your energy. We were talking earlier about how there's all these subconscious decisions we know we need to make. All of that, when it's ruminating in your mind, y'all, is siphoning your energy, which is the least sexiest thing as a woman, right? Like, and you felt that and I felt that. But when you can just move powerfully, I know I use the lioness archetype a lot. When you can move powerfully and be able to not drive or force, but know when to turn it on, when to turn it off, that's how we cultivate and unlock our somatic superpowers, which then ultimately helps you become what I call unfuckwithable, which is where life can be lifing and you're steady, you're poised, and moments that maybe you do feel that emotional contraction, you're able to recover much faster. Because as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as for those of you who are parents, that is your power, is the ability to stay embodied in those situations. Because what happens on the other side is when you haven't cultivated a $1 million nervous system, then those little things during the day, they eat at you. You're thinking about it. You're not sleeping at night. You're constantly second guessing what you said to the client versus just allowing it to be what it is and knowing that exactly how it laid out is perfect so that you can come back to your center and allow yourself to love yourself through every single experience. Because as founders and entrepreneurs, I think we are often our own worst critic. And that self-judgment and that self-criticism is one of the highest forms of chaos that we will create. And so when you're constantly judging yourself, how do you show up with your clients then? Do you think you're more magnetic to money or less? So my work in teaching people how to cultivate a $1 million nervous system starts there. And ultimately, that's what helps you build generational wealth. And I don't just mean a bunch of dollars in the bank. I mean wealth in the form of time, wealth in the form of opportunities, wealth in the form of relationships, wealth in the form of what is priority to you. Is it spending more time with your kids? Is it teaching your kids? You see, people get wealth twisted. They think it just is a bunch of money in the bank when I see a lot of people who make a lot of money and they're miserable and they don't have a life. Vice versa, I see people where they're still learning the financial game, but they have so much abundance and fulfillment in relationships, wisdom, things that they teach. And so wealth to me means what is going to make you whole and what is going to fill your cup outside of the almighty dollar.
Very cool. Very cool. So something you said, actually, I want to speak on because I think it is a really good example that maybe will help people to understand the difference between having a $1 million nervous system or not. With everything that is transitioning with my business and school is starting back up. So there is kind of some upheaval and people's schedules are weird and shifting. And I had 2 clients on Monday who are wellness patients, have been coming for a while. And one of them said, I need to drop down to just whenever, not regularly. And then the other one was like, soccer schedule is changing and we're not going to be able to come in at all. And 8 years ago, that would have wrecked my day, my week. I would have taken it so personally, like, what did I do wrong? And also the fear of how that is going to impact my business, finances, all of the things. I would have spiraled. And like, I observed myself and I thought, wow. I mean, it was like a non-response. It was almost like I made a note to myself to cancel their auto drafts on Thursday. And that was it. That's all it was. And so for me, like, I feel like that is an example of me moving into that $1 million nervous system in one specific instance anyway.
That's a great example, Brooke, by the way, because, like, I know you and we're in the chiropractic space and the service provider space, but I love that you shared that because that's getting like raw, real, and vulnerable. And also that's what happens in the day-to-day reality is like, oh, a patient needs to drop frequency, or your favorite person stops care, or your favorite client ends their contract. And it's like, do you just see that for what it is and you don't spiral, or do you be powerful like you and like, okay, got it. And that's the practice of non-attachment,
Mm-hmm.
where you're cool either way and
Yeah.
you're grateful either way. And when you play in my world, and Brooke knows this, you realize like nothing's missing. And in that, my guess is as people go out, as do people come in. And you can stay in the flow of the universal forces that are working for you versus grip and attach and like cling on to people who actually are probably just meant to fall away so that more people aligned with who you're becoming can actually start.
Yeah, 100%. What would you say, and you may have kind of touched on it already, but what are the qualities of a person who has $1 million nervous system?
Yeah, I think to add to what I've already added in your beautiful example, they are someone who believes and knows deep down that one, life is working for them, not against them. They are someone who is also humble to realize that life is a big old dojo and that life is our greatest teacher. And there's someone who is open to change and growth and the ability to pivot towards what's going to fulfill them even more deeply. You making these big pivots in your business right now it's a big deal. It doesn't have to feel like a big deal when we have $1 million nervous system, but it's also like that's a big shift. And a lot of people will stay stuck and they'll stay in the same thing because of their ego. And so someone who has $1 million nervous system, they're able to put their ego aside and really start to cultivate that connection with what I call Gus, God, universe, source, and have the strategy, right? Learn the business strategy, but also live from their soul purpose as well and show up for the people that they love. They're not hyper consumed by their business. They're able to be present with the people that they love in every single moment because they realize that that is the only time we have is the present moment and that the past and the future are simply illusions. So I think that's just more of what I would add.
Yeah.
Also, like they're able to enjoy life even in the challenges. They don't get caught up in the drama. You heard me say like moving from drama to dharma. So they're very dharma or purpose driven and they have a vision, they have a mission, they have a design that's guiding them. That's what I call the map of fulfillment. They're able to be pulled by that. And they're often the ones that are leaving an impact. They're influencing people. They're leaving an impact on the planet beyond their own, desires. Like it's important to have your own internal desires, but also like what type of impact and legacy do you want to leave on this planet for generations to come? As we talked about with, you being a mom, you being a doctor, influencing people. I think that's a lot of the qualities I see of people who have cultivated that $1 million nervous system, which then paradoxically, but not, pours into every dimension of your life,
Mm-hmm.
i.e. the material, the clients, attracting new clients, the ability to attract and organize and magnify your financial wealth because money is a thing on the planet. So those are a lot of the qualities I see.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay. So we've talked a lot about feminine energy and embodiment and building $1 million nervous system. You have an experience coming up in October that I would love to have you share about and share with my audience to let them know if they're interested in creating their own $1 million nervous system.
Yeah. Thanks, Brooke. Thank you for letting me and allowing me to share. So y'all have heard Dr. Brooke and I talk about cultivating your $1 million nervous system. And if you're saying and feeling like, okay, but how do I do that, Dr. Mel? Like, how do I actually step into that in my body, in my mind, in my emotions? I am hosting a 30-day experience, and it's all about cultivating your $1 million nervous system, not from a place of doing more, but starting with the inner work. So we're going to be talking about how do you ultimately become a somatic sovereign, meaning reclaiming this body that we live in, that our nervous system exists in, because your body and your nervous system is the conduit of your consciousness. And when your body shifts, everything around you starts to shift because your body is the vessel in which we experience life. So if you've got density and things going on here, it's going to ripple into your relationships, into your business, into your money game. So that's the first step. The second step is ultimately slaying your shame. What do I mean by that? Well, when we have lived experiences from childhood, from teenage years, we can get a little bit emotional about it and carry those emotional moments into our current reality. And especially as women, I think there's a lot of guilt and shame. I think it's changing, or I'm changing, so I'm just seeing it change around me. Having the ability to be powerful, to be seen, to heal your visibility wounds, to be able to like make an impact and make money and not have shame around it. And clearing that. So becoming a shame slayer. And ultimately, that's going to help you become more courageous. So I call it living courageously to then live into your wealth design and build generational wealth. So this experience is going to teach you those 4 foundational elements. It's 30 days with myself, and super excited to share that Dr. Brooke is actually going to be one of our facilitators in this experience. So y'all are going to get both of us. She's going to be guiding you. She's going to be leading you. She's going to be on our live activation calls. And a lot of people have said, Dr. Mel, is there a way that I can just carry you around in my pocket? Like when I need that dose of inspiration, or there's power in proximity and there's power in one shift in your perception. Mm-hmm. Literally gold when you can have that shift out of the spiral into the upward spiral. And so people have said, how do I just carry you around with me? Well, y'all are going to be able to do that in this experience. So I'm going to be doing 30 days of recoding, meaning every single day, you're going to get a training, a download from me inside of our private Discord community. And it's going to be anywhere from like 8 to 15 minutes on one of the 4 elements of cultivating your $1 million nervous system. So how do you become a somatic sovereign? How do you slay your shame and actually live in your superpower and transform your shame to your superpower? How do you actually live courageously, as Brooke has beautifully demonstrated? How do you actually cultivate that courage where you can move even in fear, which then leads to higher levels of wealth, both in all dimensions of your life and financially too? So you're going to be getting downloads from me. You're going to be getting guidance on our live calls from myself. Dr. Brooke's going to be in the community with us. And that's not all. There's tons of prizes. I'm giving away over $11,000 of prizes, y'all. One of them being a $7,000 tuition to my signature Project Lioness cohort program. Or if you're already in my ecosystem, a $7,000 tuition to any of my programs. So that's just one of the prizes. And I'll leave the rest up to y'all. I know Brooke's going to drop the link. It's going to be an amazing experience. We're already having tons of people sign up. And those people who are signing up early, they're already getting some downloads from me. And I think it's important for your listeners to know too, Brooke, like as much as I love business systems and creating order and organization, I'm a Taurus, so I love the earth stuff. I love the practical stuff. I'm very big in turning like the philosophy and the principles into like, how does this actually show up practically in your life? But I also like to dive into the energetics and the consciousness and the universal laws that are absolutely dictating your reality and your laws of matter. And how do we live more in that quantum reality where in any moment, anything is possible, and teaching people how to access that more often. So I am a bridge between the practical and the principles, the strategy and the consciousness. So I think it's really important for your listeners to know that I don't just speak to business systems, but we've had people who don't have businesses sign up because they just want to build their own $1 million nervous system to pour into their kids, to pour into their job. So that's a little taste of what to anticipate inside this experience.
Yeah. And I just have to speak to those like daily downloads because this spring, Dr. Mel did something, and she does actually still have her free Instagram channel that like she will, share downloads into once in a while. But like just the value from those downloads this spring. So I can't even wait for the downloads that are coming through this challenge. And just the prizes like are incredible because Project Lioness, I can't even really like speak to how valuable just being in the room with Dr. Mel and her wisdom, and then the other people who are learning and growing and expanding. It just like you change just by seeing someone else change. And so, I mean, I feel like it's worth even more than $7,000. So if you join the value of the prizes that Dr. Mel is giving away, and I can tell you 100%, like joining $1 Million Nervous System, you will get incredible value just with that alone. But then to be able to go further with her programs is truly a gift that will keep on giving. I have seen it in my own life, my business, my relationships, my body. I am so grateful that you were here with me today. We had this beautiful conversation, and I will definitely put the link to $1 Million Nervous System in the show note, and also Dr. Mel's Instagram, so that you can connect with her and follow her. And I just, again, thank you for being here, Dr. Mel. I truly appreciate you and all that you are doing and have done for me and everyone else that you've impacted.
The feeling is mutual, my friend. And I want to say, for those people who do sign up with this podcast, please put Dr. Brooke down that she referred you, because she is going to be a leader in that program. And the feeling is mutual, my friend. You know, you have been a massive catalyst for things that I have built. You have shown up as a leader in my containers, and I'm grateful to be in not just this experience that I get to invite you into as a leader, but honestly, life. Like I said, Brooke has been one of my OG people, and it's such a gift to be able to learn from each other. You have taught me so much. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for not just being on this podcast, but for everything.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Okay, friends, I would invite you first to follow Dr. Mel, join $1 Million Nervous System, and remember, you are designed to thrive.